What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Lighting the Lamp podcast. I am here with Steve
Hello.
and Joe,
What's up?
and this week's episode is actually our hot takes episode. So we did one of these last year, hot takes hockey, and we are back. We are back, and better than ever. We've got some real good ones here, and I'm excited to hear what you guys have to think. Joe and Steve have no idea which ones we're going to be doing, except for potentially the ones that they've suggested, and
I don't
that's
even remember mine, so
it's the way we like it. So I've highlighted them here, and I'm going to go ahead and pick out the ones that I think are worth talking about. So let me just move some stuff around, and we'll start with not like a. We'll start with one that's like a little bit, I guess, less controversial, but still worth talking about, in my opinion. And that's actually the one that Steve suggested here, which is he said the removal of the goon and premeditated fights has actually made the league more exciting as players are held more accountable by whole teams instead of just one guy and being afraid of like the big bad goon, coming to, I guess, feed you your lunch for lunch. So what do you guys think? Removal of the goon as a role, has it made the league more exciting? Has it made it actually safer in a way? Has it made it more dangerous? Like, what do you guys think about this particular take?
well,
Well,
considering it was mine, I guess I'll give you my opinion, right?
yeah,
Uh, I think it just made the game more exciting because you now all four lines have to play. Like you can't just stick a guy out there whose whole purpose is to like throw elbows and like fight guys. So to replace that one guy, like whole teams got tougher now. Like we saw it with the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2016 and 2017 where they won Stanley Cups and like they had no like clear defined tough guy, but like the team itself was very tough and resilient. And I think it makes the game safer because it forces whole teams to have to police the game now instead of just like we said, like one guy who you could essentially avoid because he's only playing 3 minutes a night.
What do you think, Joe?
like there is a lot of truth to that, and the way you explained it, I feel like was great because it really did. Like, I never looked at it that way. My only issue with the problem, and I don't know if it's as much as getting rid of the goon. There's just, as Steve said, for example, like having four lines policing and everything like that. There, I think that there are some top lines in the NHL, maybe not forward and defense at the same time, but forward lines that would not throw regardless of what happened.
Well, yeah, I mean that's true. You're not gonna have Nathan McKinnon fighting if you could help it, but
No, but at the
the
same
idea
time, I
is
feel
like you're
like
not gonna be able to push them around either.
yeah, but I still feel like I would like to see more of that from all four lines.
So, do you? One of the points.
Like I'm saying, for example, let's just use Toronto Maple Leafs, for example. Austin Matthews takes an elbow to the head. Do you expect Mitch Marner to be dropping the gloves for him?
I mean, that happened last year and nothing happened, so no, I don't expect it. I mean, Austin Matthews literally got like a forearm shiver to like the temple last year, and nobody did anything to stand up for him.
Like I just think some
But I'll give you,
teams and
but I'll give you an example, Joe, of like what I mean, and like that's a good example, right? The Brandon Tanev hit the other last week that we talked about when he blew up Jared Tenorti, the entire Bruins bench was barking, like they all wanted a piece of him. You know what I mean? And I think we said it on the podcast, but like when the referees threw him out of the game, it actually might have been better for him overall than it would have been had he stayed in the game because like the entire Bruins team was coming after him. You know what I mean? And that's more or less what
he
I'm
might not
saying.
have to fight one player once. He might have had to fight three people three different
And
times.
regardless of even fighting, like they might just start taking runs at him. So now you have like an entire team just trying to like sending like nuclear ICBMs at him. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
you have Trent Frederick coming in like a heat-seeking missile. You have Brad Marchand. Like the list goes on. That's more or less what I'm saying. Like I'm not saying like you have all four lines actively policing, but there's a mentality now where like
At any moment, you can get.
you have to be able to like step up for your team and like throw a hit if you have to, you know,
Fair
like
enough. I would agree with you then.
because now you can't just be like, oh, we're gonna send Marty McSorley out there to throw like a baseball bat, two-hand swing at some guy's forehead, and you know,
Yeah, and I think I just have to realize that some teams that they just completely got rid of that game style
they're just soft.
altogether.
And there's a good example of, I mean, yeah, the Maple Leafs play an exciting brand of hockey, but the real thing with the Maple Leafs is like there's no success because of that. You know what I'm saying? Like their roster is so depleted of any of this or any sense of like toughness, and like they go absolutely nowhere every year, and they lose to the Bruins, who perennially are considered like the toughest team in the NHL.
Well, that's why I always said Toronto's not a playoff team.
Oh yeah, no, I mean people who listen to the podcast and know we've been very critical of Kyle Dubas and the Maple Leafs.
So the only thing that let me play devil's advocate here for a second, because my own personal opinion is that premeditated fights I think were stupid. You know, like
Yeah.
two fourth liners drop the gloves off the opening faceoff doesn't do anything for the game in my opinion. Like it was exciting, everybody loves a good fight, but as far as like the ebb and flow of the game, like it doesn't do anything.
Well, yeah, and people will argue that like that specific instance will settle a game down, right? Like if you have the Rangers and the Flyers going at it, and you had like Colton Orr drop the gloves with like, I don't know, Zach Ronaldo at the time. The idea was like it would settle the game down, but I never saw that to like actually be proof of anything. If anything, it makes the game worse, you know?
Right. So I think like premeditated fights always didn't make sense to me. I think getting that out of the league is a good thing. But the other thing is, well, as far as like when there's no catalyst, right? Like if you rock some guy at the end of the second, and then at the start of the third, the other team's like, all right, listen, we got to go off the draw. Like you have to answer the bell at that point, right? But
Or
like
like in
just
the
Yeah, no,
playoffs from
I was
game
just
to
about to bring
game,
that
yeah.
up as a point.
but just like random, like it's the opening face off, nothing. There's no history. It's the first meeting
Yeah.
of the year, and you're like, hey, just want to like throw some fists. It's like,
Well,
nah,
was
right.
it game one that the Devils and Rangers did that in the playoffs, or?
No, it was the last game of the regular season. But that's because, so some background to that was they threw their fourth line out to Matt and the Rangers because they had the last change, put our fourth line out because, I mean, that was Pete DeBoer was looking for it, you know? And as exciting as it was looking back on it, it's like, but what was the point? Like, is that hockey? No. Like, it's a fist fight. I came to watch a hockey game. I didn't come to watch a boxing match, you know?
And some people, you know, like everybody loves a good fight, right? But like just random things like that don't really serve a purpose, I don't think needs to be in the game. But there is an argument that I find mildly compelling, which is when there were guys like George Peros or the most famous one being Marty McSorley in the league, the counter argument would be, well, you would never even throw that hit in the first place because you knew McSorley was going to come put you through the boards on the next hit, right? And I don't necessarily think that you need a goon anymore, but I do think that you do need a couple of players like that to keep people in check, because like you said last year when Austin Matthews got elbowed in the head, like nothing really happened, you know.
I'll put it to you this way. Marty McSorley is like, I guess like we're gonna use the nuclear analogy, right? Because it works for this. Marty McSorley is like the 400 kiloton like thermonuclear warhead, right? You don't want to have to use them if you don't have to. But you get guys like Matt Martin, which are still a nuclear deterrent, but they're like, you know, the 5 kiloton like tactical nuke. Like you can use them if you have to. And like, so guys like Matt Martin have a place in the league because Matt Martin can still play hockey. Like he's part of the best fourth line in hockey now because he's out there chucking knucks every chance he gets because he's like laying hits and holding guys accountable. But I think, so I guess like he's not a goon. I think like guys like Marty McSorley, like those thermonuclear levels of like deterrence aren't necessary when like there's really no place for them. Like if the league
John
getting
Scott.
faster. I mean, John Scott, yeah. I mean, he was phased out of the league how fast? I mean, look at
Well,
guys
no,
like.
he was phased out of the league because he won the MVP
Well, yeah, no, that's a whole different
vote,
story.
and the NHL's like, we
I'll put
can't have him
He
there.
also wasn't a very good hockey player, but
I'll put it
No,
to you
he
this way.
wasn't. But
You had Dylan McElrath with the Rangers, whose whole thing was he was this big, tough, bruising defenseman, but like if he couldn't play the game that well, and he came into the league at the time when the league started getting faster, and look what happened. He's now playing AHL hockey somewhere.
I completely forgot about him, and he was pretty good actually.
He was okay.
I think that there will always be a place in hockey. Like, people are saying that all the league is trending towards an all talent league, and soon you're gonna have four scoring lines. And like,
absolutely
I don't
not.
think that's the case, just because you're always gonna need that guy. Like, even if it's just somebody like a scrapper, right? Not necessarily a heavyweight, like not even a Matt Martin, but like a scrapper, like a Brady Kachuk,
Like
or
a Brendan
like,
Lemieux.
right, like somebody that's gonna keep people in line, right? But I I don't necessarily know if removing the goon has made things safer, but it's definitely made it so that you don't have this guy that just can't play, but he's like 250 pounds.
Well, I say it made the game safer because goons
Well, the issue
guys.
with sorry, not to
I'm
go.
trying.
The issue with goons is that not only did
Well,
they just fight, but they also then went out and hurt people.
well,
Like
that's what
that
I'm
was the
saying. Like
problem.
them, yeah. 'Cause I was trying to think of what's the guy from Hartford. Oh my God, Samuelson. Oh, Samuelson. He's the most famous one. You know what I'm saying? Like he was a goon, but he wasn't fighting all the time. He was out there just like throwing knees and like elbowing
Right.
guys in the face. Like
Right.
so they were out there like ruining careers and causing injuries. And by and large, we've seen less injuries from like intended like trying to murder somebody and more so from just like big hits that go the wrong way. You know?
Yeah. I think if the ideal goon is somebody that plays clean until somebody else doesn't, and then he fights them, not the goons that we had where it's like the opening face off, they're just like chucking elbows off the draw. Like,
Or like Matt
Warm up to
Cook.
talking like 15 minutes into the first period. We're gonna drop the gloves.
like
Yeah,
that
and
kid
like
in San Jose, like, he first of all, he can't fight. As much as he thinks he can fight, he can't fight. He's lost both fights he's been in, and he's cross checking people in warm ups. Like, you have that guy has no place in the league.
but I'll
I
put
didn't
it
even
to
hear
you.
about this kid. Who is it?
Like Curtis Gabriel or something. Like, he sucks. He's terrible. He's
But
an awful hockey
there's
player.
But on the flip side, you've got like Trent Frederick who plays with that like edge to his game with the Bruins, and like he will chirp guys in warm-ups and he will hold guys accountable, but like he can sneak, 15, 20 goals a year isn't like
Matthew
unreasonable for him.
Matthew Kachuk.
Yeah, but Matthew Tkachuk's a different level. Matthew Tkachuk's like I think that he could hit
An
100
actual
points.
first line player.
Yeah, I think he could hit 100 points like on a full year.
Yes, but he could still do all of that too.
Yeah, he's cut from the same cloth as his dad. Like you're not gonna get that out of him. I mean,
Yeah, and his brother too. So.
Keith Tkachuk had a hard head and like he used it. So
Um. So yeah, do you have any final thoughts on this particular take? I think we're all pretty much in agreement, just to different degrees.
yeah, that's fair.
So, the only thing I would like to add is, can we name some what we would consider modern goons then? I know
Like
you brought
goons
up
that
Matt
like
Martin.
Well, I wouldn't consider Matt Martin a modern goon. He's just like the equivalent of like a nuclear deterrent
I think
nowadays.
the closest we have to a modern goon is probably Tom Wilson, because he
Yeah.
just is out there to headhunt people.
Fair enough. Fair
Pat
enough.
Maroon, like he's got no purpose other than to throw some big hits and like fight people nowadays.
And stand in front of the goalie on a power play.
Yeah,
I think the last true goon, honestly, was probably Matt Cook and Chris Kunitz on the Penguins. But even
Trevor
Chris
Gillies.
Kunitz could score you. Yeah, but Trevor Gillies was out of the league before Matt Cook was out of the league, so
Was he
or
actually?
what was it? Carbomb, Daniel Carcillo.
that guy's a clown.
He was like one of the last of like the real goons.
Rafi Torres, like,
Yeah, Matthew Torres was a first round pick too.
yeah.
Oh my god, I remember watching that Rafi Torres hit live on Marion Posa.
Yeah,
Oh.
the 41 gamer. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's what happens when you're a friggin' idiot.
Well, do you remember what's his name? The guy on the Islanders that hit Ryan Holwick with the stick, like baseball batted him
Chris
across
Simon.
the head. Yeah, Chris Simon, and then he stomped on that other guy.
That guy was a lunatic.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
Chris
he had
Simon.
like
He's the guy
no
that I think-
purpose.
I remember one year the Islanders. This is when they were awful. That was his name. I'm so happy you guys just said that. I remember one year. This is just a funny fact. The MSG broadcasting during the intermission, they would play like it was around Christmas time, but they did trivia questions, and I think Matt Martin was a rookie maybe, or second season, and at the time I had no idea about this, but Matt Martin went to Yale.
Yeah, he's a smart
So,
guy.
Yeah, he's a smart guy. So somehow it happened where the finals, I think was, or it was like a round matchup, was Chris Simon and Matt Martin, and they asked each other how many continents there were and to name them. And Matt Martin, of course, got it right. And I think Chris Simon, he said something like 10 or 11, and he like listed like North and South Africa.
I mean, his
Like,
brain was probably more like mashed potatoes.
yeah, like, so like, I guess goons are just don't make the game safe for
No.
themselves even.
Well, there's a great documentary before we move on. There's a great documentary on this called, I think, Last of the Gladiators or something like that. And it's like a whole movie about like Knuckles Nyland and all this, and about like goons in hockey and them actually getting phased out of the league. And like, I think if you want to like see like more about this topic and someone explain it a little more like thoroughly than I did, like that's a really good place to start.
All right, so that's a solid way to start off the podcast. We're gonna get real spicy real quick here, though.
Oh
Um,
no.
we have some hot takes, but I want to do a couple questions first, and then we'll get into the hottest of hot takes. And the question comes from a buddy of ours, who we all play hockey with, Nick H. I don't know if he wants his last name being said on the podcast, so we'll say Nick H. Asks us, who is the best rookie goalie this season?
I can't answer because the season's not over.
Well, I guess like who is currently the best rookie goalie, right? Like who is the best rookie goalie in the league? And I mean, you have some really good picks that come out of this one because you have Igor Shesterkin, Ilya Sorokin, Capo Kakinen, Kevin Lankinen. You have some really solid picks out of this rookie. Jake Ottinger also is in that list. So, like, who you guys pick best rookie goalie for this current season?
I can't rate the whole season yet, just because it's
Well,
not over. But like, I would say,
obviously.
ask me like the first month or like before the season even started, I would have said Shoshokin, hands down. Halfway through the season, I probably would have given it. Sorry, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce the name. Not familiar with it enough. But the kid from Minnesota or Chicago's
Capo Kakinen.
Yeah, or was it Lankinen in Chicago's?
It's Kevin Lankinen, and I actually forgot about Vitek Vanacek from the Washington Capitals as well.
Yes,
Who's managed
or
to
even
steal the
him.
starting job.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And they're all like amazing goalies, and I just have to wait for the race to say which one. But like now, Sorokin's on an 8-game winning streak, and in its 8 games, his stats have been ridiculous, including 2 shutouts. So it's like at different points, I feel like every single one of the goalies stood out to be the best goalie for like a couple weeks at least. So that's why I say I have to wait till the end of the season to pick.
I'm just gonna go with Capo Kakinen just because of how hard he's carrying right now. Like
Yes, between
the other
sorry.
goalies are like on better teams. To be honest, the only one that's on like a team that's like kind of sort of as bad is Kevin Lankinen, and they're just getting dragged, kicking and screaming by Patrick Kane. So I can't really say if he's been good or if it's just that Patrick Kane is winning them games, you know. But Capo Kakinen's just been like absolutely carrying the Minnesota Wild into contention this year.
They got the rookies, him and
Kaprizov.
yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
so,
know.
you know, Capo Kakinen I think would be my pick currently just because you have guys like Sorokin who obviously I think he's been playing fantastic. I think Ilya Sorokin's having a wonderful season. He's 8-2-1. He's got a 9 where is he? A 9.22 and a 1.97. I mean, you don't really get much better than that. But the other thing is that's taken into account is the games played, and he's only played 11 games to this point. Capo Kakinen is right up there with the rest of the leaders in games played. He's played 17. Vanacek and Lankinen have 22, but his stats are just otherworldly. He's a 9.21 and a 2.29 on a not so great Minnesota Wild team, and I think just in terms of technical ability and well, actually, I won't say that. In terms of how he's producing consistently, 12 wins in 16 games or 17 games, I think I would have to give it to Capo Kakinen. In terms of who's shown, the potential, I mean, Alex Nedeljkovic is also up there with really good stats. I think in terms of raw talent, I mean, I might be biased, but in terms of raw talent, if Shesterkin's not playing, which he currently isn't because he's hurt, I think the most talented rookie is probably Ilya Sorokin from what I've seen. But the guy that's playing the best, the most consistently across a larger sample size is 100% got to go to Capo Kakinen. Actually, I wouldn't say 100%, but he makes the strongest argument in my opinion.
He makes the worst out of all the teams we mentioned better.
Right.
He's like the MVP out of all of them. Like if we had to name all those if we had to put all those goalies into the pool right now and give one of them a Hart Trophy and exclude any other player from the league, it would definitely be Kakinen. Because he's the most valuable player to that team right now.
Yeah.
Because who else? Who is the backup? Is it Cam Talbot?
Yes, I think so.
Let's go to Minnesota.
It is Cam Talbot, right?
Let's see. Yes. So, I mean, this honestly genuinely might be the best crop of young rookie goalies we've seen in a long time because some of the names that we just mentioned are absolutely ridiculous. And that's also not to take away from any of the guys that were like not that are down the list maybe on some bad teams, but I mean Sorokin, Shesterkin, Nedeljkovic, Vanacek, Ottinger. It's a deep rookie class in the net this year, honestly. But if I had to pick right now, it would probably be Kakinen. But that being said, if we do see Sorokin get more starts and he ends the year with 56 games, say maybe, I don't know, 22 to 24 starts, I think you could start putting his name in the conversation for best rookie goalie and then maybe even a Calder trophy at that point, if his stats stay this good. I hope Shesterkin comes back because I do like watching him play. And I think he could also make a run for the rookie of the year if he kept playing the way he was before he got hurt. But
he was single-handedly keeping the Rangers in games most nights.
It's a tight race. It's definitely a lot of really, really good young goalies this year for sure. So it's a tough one to pick from, I think.
Do you guys find it funny that you feel like a lot of the old name like elite goalies are like becoming not that elite very quickly as we're getting all these rookie goalies flourishing at the moment?
I mean, it's always a cycle, right? The young guys are always going to overtake the old crowd at some point, but it
happened very quickly this time.
Yes.
And I think that kind of points to specifically the way the Europeans are developing their goalies now is a lot of the European leagues understand that the end goal for a lot of these kids is going to be to go overseas. And in fact, even the KHL soon is going to be playing on American-sized ice. So I think that there's an understanding there that the window of opportunity maybe for a European goalie is a little bit smaller than an American goalie because they're only coming over here, some of them when they're like 22, 23. It's like you have to be good right away. You don't have a couple years. You have to figure it out pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, you have to stake your claim.
So we'll do one more question. Or we'll do a couple questions, actually, because we have some good ones here. We'll stick on the rookie train here. We get a question from Mike C., who asks, Kirill Kaprizov's contract is up at the end of the year. Are you signing him to a long-term contract or a bridge contract, and how much are you signing him for?
Well,
I would sign him to a 2-year bridge deal.
I don't know. Well, I don't know if I want to take 2 years because then you're probably going right into his UFA. So if you're gonna bridge him, I imagine you'd want to stay in his RFA eligibility.
I think he's only 22, so I think he's good for a couple years, if I'm correct. Let me pull up his cap friendly. I can tell you exactly what he's looking at here. So career Kaprizov is 23, and I believe RFA is what, until you're 26?
Yeah.
So if you bridged him for anything more than 3 years, you're taking him into his UFA.
See, I don't know if I'd even want to like bridge him. I think you should just try to sign him long term if you can, because
I
like
would
he's
just
a
want
piece
to
you want to
make
build
sure that
around.
this isn't like a flash in the pan. Where was he drafted?
Like the first round. No, he's like a second or third round pick.
Yeah.
I would just want to make sure it's not a flash in the pan because we've seen a lot of people
I mean,
like.
but he's been consistent overseas. Like his production has been consistent with his level of like his increase in production has been consistently increasing every year, and like it's translated pretty much immediately to the NHL level.
Now here's the question: do you think that the Minnesota Wild being burned by these long-term contracts previously is gonna maybe give them pause and second thought on signing a long-term deal right now?
Here's why it shouldn't. You sign this kid to an 8-year deal. At the end of the deal, he's only 31. You're not signing like a 28-year-old Zach Parise or a 29-year-old Ryan Suter to an 11-year contract. So I wouldn't really hesitate to pull the trigger on long-term deals with players his age. But like, I think they've already. I mean, Bill Guerin inherited some really awful contracts. I mean, he inherited the Suter and the Parise deals, but also he has that Jonas Brodin extension. I think it's like 7 years at like $7 million or something.
The Brodin contract is, because I have it pulled up here, I can tell you. The Jonas Brodin contract is 7 years at $6 million, and Jared Spurgeon's contract is 7 years at 7.5.
That's what I was thinking of, Jared Spurgeon. But I mean, either way, both contracts are kind of going to handicap you trying to keep Kirill Kaprizov or being able to offer him the money that he really is going to want, you know?
So I actually agree with Joe on this one. I think I would try to get him on a bridger of maybe a year or two, if nothing else, because you're going to have some contracts come off the book after that will allow you to pay him more. You know, Victor Rask's contract is up at the end of next year. Ian Cole's contract's up at the end of next year. Brad Hunt's contract, or Carson Soucy's contract, is up 3 years from now. You know, you're going to be getting money down the line. And, I mean, we have seen players, like, I think that he's got the talent, and he's already 23, and he's shown that kind of flash already. I don't think he's going to be a flash in the pan, but at the same time, on a contract situation as tenuous as the Minnesota Wild have, I think you need to play this one a little bit more cautiously. But that being said, how much money, I guess me and Joe have to work out a bridge deal here. Steve, you're signing him to a long-term contract. How much money do you think you're going to be giving him?
So what's considered long-term? 5-6 years, right?
Well, I guess this question boils down to, like, just play the GM, you know? Like, what would you, if you had that option, right? And let's assume that he's amicable to your terms, right?
So if I'm looking to sign him long-term, I might be going to looking to go 7x7, just because if his production does continue to increase and if he does become like a 30-40 goal scorer, that $7 million for a 40 goal scorer is going to be absolutely a steal, and for a 30 goal scorer is about fair, you know? I mean, David Pasternak's making what? He's on like a super team friendly deal right now. And
Yeah.
he signed it around the same age. He signed his is a bridger, but I think it was 5 years.
6 years at 6.6.
That's it. So I try to get him a little higher, maybe 7x7 or even like a 6x6 point something, you know? I think those would be pretty fair terms to take him till he's, 30, 31.
Another reason I would sign him to a bridge deal is I don't necessarily know where the NHL cap is going to be in several years in the future.
See, but to Steve's point, though, if that I don't, that's not a very good argument for what we're arguing here, Joe, because if the cap goes up, then Kaprizov can just demand more later on. So it
Yeah,
makes sense to sign him long term now, you know. That's actually an argument for Steve's long term contract because if it goes up by say 3 or 4 million, he can demand like 1 or 2 million more than what you would have gotten him at now.
So
I
say
I just think
instead of
you just don't want to get burned with how like because they have some really bad contracts on this team, you know. Sorry, go ahead, Steve. I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, it's right. I was just gonna say like instead of like say you sign him now to like a 2 or 3 year bridger at 5, right? And the cap continues to increase, and then in those 3 years he's now asking for like 8 or 9 million instead of like right now you can get him for 7 years at 7 and hold him there.
true.
That's money you can bank on always being, and you can plan around that then. It gives you a structure to be like, okay, this is our marquee piece. He's our blue chip. We're building around him anyway. So why not work our contracts around his contract? You know?
So, Joe, on a Bridger, how much money are you paying this kid?
I would say for two, I would be looking probably around 4 a year.
See, I think 4 to 5 is fair, only because Victor Rask right now, in 2 years, his 4 million comes off the book, right? So then you could just take that extra 4 million, and if he is asking for 8 million at that point, you could just add Victor Rask contract on top of what you're paying Kaprizov already.
And I mean, it's pretty comparable to what Victor Olofsson got this year in the off season, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, it's that I think I think just because I'm always more cautious on first year players, I don't know that I would necessarily be comfortable signing him long term because there is always that chance that something happens. And then the other issue is, well, like maybe he falls off. I don't think he will because he's had
I
all
mean,
that overseas training and
it
he's.
is boom or bust, right? You could either be like David Pasternak, who came over and boomed and stayed booming, or you could be like the Hamburglar, who boomed really hard and people thought he was the future, and now I don't even think he's playing professional hockey anywhere.
I just think because of the issues of the contract situation this team currently has, I think he might be looking for a bridger just because he knows the cap is supposed to go back up after next year and the contracts are going to get better after next year, and also just because you can't afford another another bad contract on this team. Again, I'm not saying Kaprizov at 7x7 would be bad, but if it does turn that way,
Yeah, if it goes south, it's pretty bad.
yeah. So
Then you end up with a Jared Spurgeon level contract that you can't move.
okay, so we'll do one more question before we get into the hot takes. And there are other questions we might come back to if you have time at the end. But this actually comes from Joe, which is A, where does Taylor Hall end up? And B, is he overrated? The answer to that last one is yes.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that before.
He genuinely might be the most overrated player in the National Hockey League, in my opinion.
Like the only season that stands out to me to be truly an elite season
Is that
is
93 points?
yeah,
Yeah. It's the only time he ever played up to his potential. He's the only first overall pick who never lived up to the hype, but for some reason is not treated like a bust. That's not to say Taylor Hall isn't like a good top 6 winger, but like he is not this like elite, like franchise changing winger that everybody treats him like he is. And to as
Yeah, no.
and as to where he ends up, I honestly have no idea because who knows how much money he's going to be asking for after this season and who's going to be willing to pay him after this absolute disaster that was his season in Buffalo. I mean,
yeah.
what's he got,
Like
two
a big
goals?
part, like to me, about where he's going to go is what are they asking for him?
I think the Islanders would be smart to take like a flyer on it, like see if they could take a flyer on him for like a first round pick. I mean, like if they're in the playoffs, you're picking in the bottom half anyway. And this year's draft already is kind of like a crapshoot because of like where all the players have been playing. Like all like the junior players and everything because of the COVID season it's been harder to predict where the scout with scouting, I guess is what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say in a roundabout way. So for like where he could end up this season at the deadline, I think the Islanders would be an amazing fit. I mean, him, Matt Barzal on a number one power play unit would be
With
disgusting,
Jordan
probably.
Eberle, who he did work good with in Edmonton.
Let's see here.
But like, let's just say he continues to play horribly, and that asking price comes down to like 2 second-round picks. I'm jumping all over that too if I'm the Islanders. Like,
Yeah, well, we don't have this year's second round.
yeah, but if they want next year's second-round pick and like this year's third, jump on it. You know.
Here's an interesting one. He's on a 1-year deal, and the Florida Panthers have $8.8 million in cap space, and they lost Hoffman this offseason, and they're already playing fantastically. Do you think that they
And
might be
Gregory
interested?
I mean, I'd be interested just because Gregory Denisenko didn't look like he was ready to take that big step, and neither is Owen Tippett. So, and the worst case, right? You take a flyer on him like a rental. He walks, and Owen Tippett takes this year to develop a little bit more, and next year takes that step. Or Gregory Denisenko takes this offseason to really adjust to the NHL size ice, and then comes back next year as an animal. So like, it's not like you're stunting anybody's growth by like going out and getting him, and I really don't think it would alter too much in that top six that like they all of a sudden would just be like awful.
Not even just that. You can use him as bait for Seattle next year at that point too.
Exactly.
So here's another question. What if Buffalo comes back at you and says they want Spencer Knight?
If it's like in a 1-for-1, I would tell them absolutely not. You better be giving me like Jack Quinn.
You
know
want
what
some
I'm saying?
insurance on that because it is the 1-year contract?
Exactly. I'm not trading you my top blue chip goaltender for Taylor Hall, who hasn't even been able, when Jack Eichel was healthy, wasn't even playing that well, and now without Jack Eichel has been disastrous.
I think if I had to bet, if you told me that I have to make a bet on where Taylor Hall is going this offseason, I could see Montreal being interested. Their name has been thrown around, and God knows that they need somebody that can score goals. And I think them and the Florida Panthers, assuming that Hall would want to play in Florida, are probably the two teams that can A, afford him, and B, have a need for him. That being said, it's going to be interesting because, for all we know, Patrick Laine might be on the chip this offseason.
Ironically enough, you know who would actually really benefit from adding somebody that could score from the wing?
Columbus?
Winnipeg.
The Edmonton Oilers.
Well, you know that they'll be all over that. Another scoring forward? Sign me up!
I mean, not for nothing. Like, they do need to distribute their offense more evenly through their, all their offense comes through two
Oilers are
centers.
going to go back for Hall.
They
They
could.
totally could.
They could, but
It's been in the rumor mill. It's been all over Twitter.
What about Dallas?
I was thinking
I
Dallas
heard rumors
too.
about possibly even Toronto.
Yeah, Toronto's always in on scoring wingers though, but I don't take that seriously because what are they going to give him? Timothy Liljegren?
I also don't think they can afford it.
Nah, they can't this year.
Well, it's a 1-year contract, so
Yeah, I mean, even if Buffalo were to
Buffalo
eat like
could,
half of it, I
yeah,
don't think they could afford it.
yeah, but then you trade one player that's contract's coming up this year. You know
The
what I'm
issue
saying?
is like the Maple Leafs don't have contracts like that. Is what I'm trying to tell you. Like they're locked into a lot of really awful deals because of
To get Taylor Hall would cost you one of the big four.
Yeah.
And Ian Nylander's not even going to make that up that much money. They only have 3 contracts on his team that are $8 million or more, and it's Marner, Tavares, and Matthews.
And then
wait, Taylor Hall's making 8? I thought he was making 7.
No, he's making 8. And then if you had them retain half of it, so now you're only trying to trade for 4. The Maple Leafs, because they log jam themselves into those big 4 contracts, all their other contracts are like 1 year, 1 point something, 1 year, $2 million. So like it's not just like they could shed one guy for Taylor Hall to like make up the difference. They'd have to like dump like roster pieces.
Making?
It's 5.6, but you're not trading Jake Muzzin.
He's
because
their best
that's the most
defenseman.
Toronto Maple Leaf thing ever.
I mean, true, but
I don't think Kevin Dubas is that brain dead though.
No, but why play defense when you could score?
Here's an interesting
Taylor Hall
thing.
isn't even scoring this year.
Here's an interesting thing about the Maple Leafs. This is completely unrelated, but Freddie Anderson's contract's up at the end of the year, and all we've been hearing about is how much they hate him. Do you think
Oh,
he
he's
goes
God.
somewhere else in the offseason? You think he's out of there?
Oh, he's God. I can't see him wanting to stick in the Toronto media environment the way they've been crucifying him for the last 3 years because they haven't won a Stanley Cup, as if shelling out $40 million to 4 forwards and then not investing at all in your back end really isn't the problem. Is really Freddie Anderson. It's like, are you kidding? Like, the guy every year is top 10, if not top 5, in wins in the NHL, and he gets close to like the 40 win mark with these teams, the Maple Leafs recently. And
The
most
subpar
nights,
defense.
yeah, and for the most nights, he's the only reason they're even in the game, if they're even winning, you know. So it's absolutely ludicrous that the way they treat him up there, and the way a lot of people, honestly, in like the hockey universe have bought into it. Like, everybody thinks he's like this subpar, not good goaltender. It's like, okay, what he did in Anaheim isn't all that impressive, considering that Anaheim team he was playing on was disgusting. But like, even coming over to the Maple Leafs when they weren't very good, he got them into the playoffs his first year there, and then has had them in the playoffs every year, despite having a weaker defensive core every successive season he's been there. So I think he's gone, or I'd leave anyway if I was him.
I think so too. That was just a little tangent, but
But here's a real question: where do you think he could go? Like, who do you think's in the? I mean, like Colorado,
Buffalo.
Buffalo,
Seattle.
Carolina.
He could go to Seattle. I mean, if they wanted that, like, there always seems to be like the veteran goalie that ends up on the expansion team, right?
Yeah.
All right, I have a really good one. We're gonna get into the nitty gritty now. We're past this, not the softballs, but we're past the intro here. So this is from me. And I have a couple hot takes. We're gonna do, and then we're gonna go to a couple more from some friends. But one I wanted to say is, since the year 2000, and specifically since the year 2010, the United States has been significantly better at developing defensemen than Team Canada has been. Which is to say that United States defensemen are currently better than Canadian defensemen, essentially.
Well, it's a tough call, right? Because you do have some really good young Canadian defensemen like Thomas Chabot, but
So
and Cale Makar too.
Defenseman.
I mean, I don't know. It's tough. I don't really know, honestly. I don't know if I'd be able to do it off the top of my head.
So I'll just read you the active American defensemen. I'll just throw some names out at you that are having. We'll do just the active ones here. So you have guys by the names of Quinn Hughes, Jeff Petrie, John Carlson, Adam Fox, Seth Jones, Charlie McAvoy, Zach Werenski, Ryan McDonough, Jacob Slavin, Ryan Lindgren, Keandre Miller, Jacob Trouba, and that's also not to mention some up-and-comers like Jake Sanderson and Luke Hughes, who's projected to go first overall this year. I don't know. I was looking at it, and I was like, Seth Jones and Zach Werenski are arguably 2 top 5 defensemen in the league, right? John Carlson's arguably a top 5 defenseman in the league. Quinn Hughes looks like he's trending in that direction if he's not there already. So you really have 4 guys that you can just make a very strong argument for top 5 defensemen in the league, and those guys are all American.
Yeah, but it's tough because in 2 or 3 years, Bowen Byram's supposed to be getting ready to take that next step. Jamie Drysdale has just started playing, and he's Canadian, so there are guys like Braden Schneider, and even Jake Sanderson's American, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have Ryan Pulak.
Yeah, but my argument then would be that guys like Werenski, Jones, Hughes, these guys are like 21, 26. Like, they're still going to be there, They haven't even hit their prime technically.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're right.
Point. Now, who is the elite Canadian goalies at the moment? Not goalies,
you mean
sorry,
defenseman? Chabot comes to mind. You could probably argue Chris Letang comes to mind. Let me pull up a list for the Canadians. NHL defensemen, Canadians.
Petrangelo's up there.
I didn't even mention Torrey Krug, by the way. He's
Yeah.
also American. Active Canadian defenseman here. Pull this up. We'll just do this year's stats.
Where's Aaron Ekblad and Keith Yandel from?
Keith Yandel's American and Aaron Ekblad's Canadian.
So the top leaders for the Canadians in points, I'll just give you some names. Barrie, Darnell Nurse, Doughty, Hamilton, Theodore, Riley, Chikrin, Letang, Ekblad, Shabbat, Makar, and it kind of fizzles out on big names after that. Like Subban's up there, Brent Burns, but I think the American roster is deeper, and I think that they have some really high-flying, high-end talent on both sides of the puck, you know? You got guys like Jacob Slavin combining with John Carlson.
No, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think Quinn Hughes is like the best young defenseman in the league. So
and apparently Luke Hughes is better than him.
Yeah, Luke Hughes is the best one apparently.
If that's the case, then we're screwed. But
and yeah, I don't even know how that's gonna happen when it's gonna be like a 90-point defenseman. Like that's just absurd.
I don't know. I think you make a very strong argument for American defensemen as of late being significantly better than the crop coming out of Team Canada.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, like it's you make a good point.
What do you think, Joe?
I think that we have the better crop than Canada at the moment. I mean, after you said all those names and you got down to the nitty gritty, like the facts are there. I mean, because, like, who else are the like? I mean, yeah, other countries aren't going to produce as many players quite as Canada or the U.S. But you know,
I would argue though the Americans, like the Canadians, aren't even like the top three right now. Like their defensive core wouldn't even like. I think Sweden's got better defensemen.
That's who I was gonna argue about next because like you look at it and like
Finland too.
Yeah, like the Swedish defenseman. I mean, two names right away: Roman Josi, right?
And no, Roman Josi's Swiss.
Roman Josi is a Swiss.
Is he Swiss? I didn't know that.
Yeah. No, it's like Victor Hedman, Eric Carlson, like Timothy Liljegren. Like you could throw anything you want. Eric Brandstrom is going to be on. It's going to be good.
Where's Heiskanen from?
Finland.
Okay.
Yeah, he's Finnish. John Klingberg, I forgot about. He's Swedish. Like.
And the funny part is you also look at the goalies. Like, when was the last time we had a big Canadian goalie? You know, it seems like they're really producing a lot of forwards. I think that the U.S. is also better producing goalies, although right now Russia's kicking everyone in the teeth in the goalie department. But
yeah, for a while there, it was Sweden and Finnish goalies were just like dominating everybody, and then
now it's like, oh, you know, Sorokin, Shesterkin, Bobrovsky.
Yeah.
I mean, Askarov.
Canada's still turning out some good goalies, though. I mean, they've Carter Hart, to their credit.
I know, but that's one name.
It's true. I'm just saying. It's not like they've stopped turning out.
No, Carter Hart's a good goalie.
I don't know. I feel like right now, Team Canada's overall focus
is a lot of forwards. Specifically centers. Tons of centers.
And I don't want to take anything away from the names that we named. On these, like Dougie Hamilton is arguably a top 5 defenseman. Morgan Riley, you can argue for the top 5. Ekblad, you could, although that argument's a little bit weaker. Shabbat is going to be there, but I just think when you look at the guys playing now, like
you didn't mention Pietrangelo either, who could be up there.
Yeah,
you know,
like I just think when you look at it, I don't know. I'm liking the U.S. defenseman. I really am.
I think the American roster is just better than the Canadian roster. To be honest.
Okay.
Like overall.
Speaking of Russians, we'll go to another one from me here. The Capitals' significant historical playoff struggles are partially due to a total lack of leadership from Alex Ovechkin, and the Capitals would have and should have been more successful if Nick Backstrom was the captain.
I don't know if it would have been Nick Backstrom specifically, but like they did have Justin Williams for a couple of those years. You know, Mr. Game 7, a little more clutch than Ovi was during a lot of that era.
John Carlson.
So what ended up selling me on Nick Backstrom, and what led me to think about this, was Nick Backstrom, his last contract negotiation, he did by himself, right? He did it without an agent. And he left that negotiation with what he wanted, on good terms with the organization, with no agent. And what that demonstrates to me is an incredible maturity. Because we've seen players try to negotiate their own contract that either get shafted by the team and end up annoyed and leaving, or the management hates them and they leave on free agency, right? They can never get anywhere. I just think that Backstrom showed an incredible maturity and incredible level headedness for that negotiation. And quite honestly, I think Ovechkin's kind of demonstrated himself lately just to be a big baby. I mean, like the COVID thing and his response to that, his spearing of Trent Frederick in a very sensitive area because he was in order with them. I think he's just his response to the Tom Wilson thing. Like he's just shown that I genuinely think that you can lay part of the struggles that not only just his play on the ice during those playoff runs, but the fact that I don't think he's a good captain. I genuinely don't.
Ovechkin's one of those guys who's only captain because he realistically is the best player on the team, not because of any of his leadership qualities or anything. I don't. And his teammates will go to bat for him and say he's a great leader and this and that, but like, I don't know. Ovechkin doesn't exactly leap to my mind in terms of great captain the same way Sidney Crosby does, you know? Like Sidney Crosby, for what it's worth, uh, had all the pressure that Alex Ovechkin had a worse team arguably than Ovechkin did a lot of those years, and continued to knock him out of the playoffs every year.
I would argue that Crosby probably had even more because wasn't he coming off the heels very recently of
Mario
the
Lemieux,
Mario Lemieux era?
he played with Mario Lemieux his rookie year.
So some pretty big shoes to fill. And when Ovechkin stepped into the Caps, they were trash.
Literal hot trash.
Like, what do you think, Joe? Alex Ovechkin, terrible captain. A lot of the playoff struggles are at his feet. I'm laying a lot down for a very beloved member of the National Hockey League here. Like, what do you think about this?
I think there's better choices, especially after acquiring like somebody like possibly TJ Oshie. Because like to me, he seems like he would be more of a fitting captain. I mean, even going back to like that, Team USA Olympic game when he just said, "I got it, boys." Like don't worry about it, and went out and won the game himself. Not just
Yeah,
that,
but Oshie also came in like after Ovechkin had already been captain for so many years. Like,
yeah, and that's the hard part is we're going back to like times when who else was on the team besides Nicholas Backstrom. So,
well, it's like,
and
I'll
I
put,
don't want to necessarily say that Nicholas Backstrom wouldn't be, but to me, I just feel like Nicholas Backstrom isn't just a very a very quiet man.
I'll put it to you this way: the best example I could think of like a captain, like somebody being stripped of their captaincy because somebody else took the place from them, was Joe Thornton. Joe Thornton couldn't get that team over the hump, couldn't get them to the Stanley Cup final, couldn't get them anywhere. They gave the captaincy to Joe Pavelski, and like Pavelski got him to a Stanley Cup final. I mean, they ended up losing to Sidney Crosby, but still, like, I think maybe had the Capitals maybe realized, hey, Ovechkin might not just, maybe he's our best player, but he's maybe not our captain, they probably would have succeeded a little bit more before they ended up having to do it with like, in the nick of time, like as the window was slamming shut on him.
Do you guys
True.
think it's fair of me to lay some of those playoff struggles at his feet?
I
Not
mean,
just
yeah.
for his play on the ice, but for his potential lack of leadership off the ice.
Well, I mean, yeah, some of those series they looked like they had already given up by game 5. Like it was just they checked out, and he looked like he had checked out as soon as they would. Most of the time when they faced adversity, until he got much older in his career, Ovechkin used to just like fold and disappear, and then in the playoffs he was almost invisible.
Yeah, I think it's funny because for a long time we all sat there and we were like, why can't this team get over the hump? Why is the second round such a mental block? And we pointed out, I mean, some of those teams had roster flaws, right? The goaltending wasn't the greatest. Sometimes the depth on defense wasn't the greatest. But you would have thought that at some point they would have just pushed through. And every year they were roadblocked by the same teams over and over again. And it leads you to wonder, when you have a guy that can be as volatile as Ovechkin does, and not only did he display It's not like he just didn't display leadership qualities. He displayed the opposite of leadership qualities this year. And that really has led me to believe he's honestly just a terrible, terrible captain. Like, I have no respect for him as far as the captaincy goes. He's a great hockey player. I think he's a terrible captain, honestly. Do you have any final thoughts on that one, or do you want to wrap that one up?
I think we can wrap that one up. I mean, I don't think I have anything I want to say about it.
I just have one question. Who's the captain of Team Russia?
I mean, Ovechkin.
Yeah, it's usually him.
Okay. I was just had a question on that.
Yeah, it's usually him. It was, I think Kovalchuk was once. I think
Kovalchuk was
Datsuk might have been
captain when
once.
Kovalchuk was captain when they went over without the NHL players.
Right. Okay. Okay. So here's one from a very dear friend of ours. We'll call him Brian L. So Steve, you know who I'm talking about.
So do I.
Oh yeah, that's right. So Pavel Zacha will eventually be considered a top 10 talent from his draft year. It's just going to take some time. This is the bold claim.
I mean, you would hope so. He was drafted like 9th overall.
So the reason that this is a bold claim,
I mean,
is because of that draft class. I think that we're gonna look back at this draft class and see that this is one of the best draft classes of all time. I'm just gonna read you some of the notable names from this class. Obviously, McDavid and Eichel. Mitch Marner, Noah Hannafin, Zacha was 6th. Ivan Provorov, Werenski, Mikko Rantanen, Barzell, Kyle Connor, Shabbat, Brock Besser, Travis Konechny, Sebastian Aho, a second-round pick.
Yeah, that's a hard no from me.
Blackwood.
I don't think he's ever going to be better than those guys.
I think there was one down the list here.
I think Pavel Zach is a good hockey player. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a really good middle six winger. I think he's a good number 2 power play guy. But I don't think he should have been picked number 6. I don't know.
Oh, Ethan Bear and Kirill Kaprizov, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know why he went so high in his draft. I mean, he was never much of a scorer. I know he's like a bigger guy, but I don't know. I really just don't see him ever jumping ahead of guys like Mitch Marner or Sebastian Aho.
This is a legendary draft. This draft shaped the future of the National Hockey League. Think about how many names I just named that are the best players on those teams.
Most of them.
Yeah, McDavid's the best player in the Oilers. Eichel's the best player in the Sabres. Marner,
best player on the Maple Leafs.
Controversial as it might be, is the best player in the Maple Leafs. You can make a strong argument for Werenski being the best player on the Jackets. Barzell's the best player on the Islanders. Shabbat's the best player on the Senators. I mean, the list... Sebastian Aho's the best player on the Hurricanes. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. This is a stacked draft class. And I didn't even mention Mikko Rantanen because I don't think he's the best player in the Avalanche because it's Nathan McKinnon.
Job that year.
Well, the Bruins, I mean, you draft Zaboral, DeBrusk, and Shenishin, and DeBrusk is really the only one that's broken into the league full time. That's a rough one. But, I think that he has the potential to turn out to be the best two-way player of this draft. The issue there is Sebastian Aho is actually a lot better on defense than people give him credit for.
He's probably going to win a Selke trophy in his career.
Yeah. And obviously, Brian's point was that it's going to be in the future, right? In the future, he will be a top 10 pick. But I don't see any of these guys falling out of the top 10 is the problem.
The only way I see that happening is if there's only 10 people left from that draft in the NHL and everybody else retires.
I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Zacha.
He'd have to have a real big breakout year.
Right.
And I'm talking 90 points, breakout year. He'd have to be better than some of these guys have been already.
I mean, Hart candidate.
if we just throw the list together, right? I think we can lock Connor McDavid as a top 10 player now and in the future, right? Because
He's
again,
number one.
the point is in the future, right? So I don't see him
Yeah.
falling out. I think it's fair to lock in Jack Eichel. I think it's fair to lock in Mitch Marner. I think it's fair to lock in Werenski. Rantanen, I would say, is a lock. Aho is a lock.
Barzal.
Kaprizov's not. I'm not locking him in yet. I think Barzell and Shabbat and Kyle Connor make very strong arguments, along with guys like Provorov and Besser and Konechny. I think we have 6 spots that are guaranteed locks, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the other 4 that you're trying to break into. That's tough. That's a tough thing. I think in Brian's defense, I do think that Zacha is A, better than people give him credit for. B, better than the Devils fans give him credit for. And C, I think he will turn out to be one of, if not the best two-way players out of this draft, because we're already seeing that out of him. It's just a question of, is that going to be good enough to get him into the top 10? I think in most draft years, yes, but this one, you're asking a lot.
I think the real issue with Zach is he got drafted 6th overall. When you draft 6th overall, you're not looking to get like a 200, like a two-way specialist, you know, and that's not his fault.
Unless you're getting like a Pavel Datsuk or like an Anze Kopitar two-way player.
Or Patrice Bergeron.
Right. I don't know. I think in most draft years, I would feel fairly confident with saying Pavel Zacha will eventually turn out to be a top 10 pick, because most draft years aren't this deep. But this is a tough draft to be in, to try to break into the top 10. So as much credit as I want to give to Pavel Zacha, I think he will ultimately end up being the second best two-way forward out of this draft, because I do think Sebastian Aho is going to keep developing that defensive side of his game. I don't think it's going to be good enough to get him into the top 10 when all is said and done. So, sorry, Brian. I know that's probably not what you wanted to hear, but again, I love me some Pavel Zacha. I think he's a fantastic player. I think the Devils fans need to give him more credit, but that 2015 draft, like I said, if it was any other year, throw him in the top 10, 100%. But this year, this draft has shaped the future of the NHL and is going to continue to do so for many years to come. So that's a hard one to break in. Up next, what time are we at? We'll do a couple more before we wrap it up here. We will. We have another one from Mike C, who said, if the Wings get the first overall pick, do they take Jesper Wallstedt, the goaltender? And if not, where does Jesper Wallstedt end up? I think this is an interesting question, because goalies generally don't really even go in the first round most of the time. But if you're the Detroit Red Wings, are you taking the goalie at first overall if you get that pick?
I know Wallstedt's supposed to be like the best young goalie out of this last crop. So it's better than Askarov and all that. But if I'm going first overall, I don't know if I can pass up on Luke Hughes. You know, like getting a number 1 defenseman who's supposedly better than Quinn. I don't know if I could pass up on that.
Joe, are you taking a goalie with your first overall pick if you're the Detroit Red Wings?
No, I just think it's way too much to gamble on a goalie. Personally, I mean,
you go first overall with a goalie, you gamble and lose, you look like an idiot. You know?
Yeah, like the goalie turns out, I don't want to say to be a bust, but like, let's just say like an okay, like starter, nothing crazy. Like, I hate saying that, but you know, especially in a league where I feel like goaltending is, I'm not saying elite goaltending, but at least okay goaltending's pretty common.
I mean, you don't win without good goaltending nowadays.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't know. I mean, maybe this year because it's you know who else really is there that's that high up there. You have what, a couple people in the top five, and then it starts to really fall off if I'm not mistaken, right?
Well, it's hard to tell too because
It's
like
kind of
they,
a mess, yeah.
a lot of these guys didn't get to play.
True. So maybe if it works out, I might be willing to gamble. I'm not really a gambling man, so that's what it boils down to, me personally. But
So the last goalie drafted first overall was Marc-Andre Fleury in 2003. The guys that came after Fleury, Eric Stahl, Nathan Horton, Vanek, Zherdev, you can kind of understand why you would take Fleury at that point. I mean, this is a pretty good first round, but and you guys, you know me, I love to build from the back end. I think every team should build from the back end out. I think the goalie is the most important. Then you need to fill out your defensemen and your centers before you even think about taking wingers. That being said, it's quite a gamble taking a goalie first overall, only just because if you take a defenseman first overall and he's not a top 2 elite defenseman, you can probably slot him somewhere in your lineup, right? You have 6 other slots for him. Forwards, you have 12 other slots. Goalies, you have starter and backup. That's it. And I think on a team like Detroit, right now, given the state of their franchise, I don't think they're necessarily drafting for position. I think they're just drafting the best overall player. And right now, that's either Quinn Hughes, Owen Powers, or Atu Ratti are the top 3 consensus picks. I think if I'm the Red Wings, I'm taking Luke Hughes just to build from that back end up. And I don't think I necessarily gamble on the goalie first overall. I love building from the back end, but when you're at a position like the Red Wings are, where you just need everything, if they needed a goalie really bad, right? They had deep prospect pools at every other position, then yeah, take the goalie, right? Especially in a year like this year where you don't know. But I don't know if this is necessarily the move for the Detroit Red Wings right now.
Yeah, no. But on the other hand, if the Sabres managed to go first overall, I'd give it some serious consideration.
Right. Because they have guys like Eichel, Reinhart, Dahlin, Ristolainen, if he stays on a team, Jake McCabe.
Casey Middlestat.
Oh, yeah, they should draft Casey Middlestat. Yeah. Who did they get last year?
Jack Quinn.
Jack Quinn, yeah. And they also have, they have Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, but it's never a bad thing to have competition in the net.
Never.
So if the Red Wings get the first overall pick and he doesn't end up going there, right now, if we look at the standings, again, assuming that they stay the same in the draft lottery, which is not going to because the lottery never works that way, and the Red Wings got completely screwed last year. If we sort it by point percentage, right now, actually the Sabres are the worst team in the league. So we'll give you the bottom 5 that isn't the Red Wings. The Sabres, the Ducks, the Senators, the Sharks, and the Devils. Which one of them do you think would be most looking to take a goalie in this draft?
Probably the Sharks.
What about you, Joe? I think he may have disconnected from the earth. So you were saying, Steve, the Sharks?
Yeah, I just think the Sharks because they're already rebuilding anyway, and they don't have anything. So if you're picking in like the top 5 and the other picks are coming off the board, just grab the goalie. Like, why not? You need everything else anyway.
Yeah. I think the Sharks could definitely use him. I think the Senators are kind of okay right now because they have Murray and he's only 26. I think the Ducks still are convinced internally that they're just going to keep John Gibson around. So I don't think they're looking for a goaltender. I also don't know if they're looking to rebuild yet, which they should be.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think the Sharks probably make the most compelling argument because the Devils also have Mackenzie Blackwood. And then
That's what I was thinking.
And the other worst team is the Predators, who have Jussi Saros. And
and Yaroslav Askarov.
right. So yeah, I guess Jesper Wallstat to the San Jose Sharks. You heard it here first. We're gonna lock that in, 100% confirm that. So we'll see you guys on draft night. We'll do one or two more depending on how fast they go. We'll do this one. Steven Stamkos would be considered the premier goal scorer of the National Hockey League had he not lost a year and a half in his prime due to a broken leg and his subsequent injuries. I think that's an interesting idea there.
I don't know about premier goal scorer just because Ovechkin managed to catch fire again, but I don't know. He'd definitely be up there. He'd definitely be like ranked way higher than he currently is.
I mean, are we talking like the premier number one?
Yes.
I don't think so, because I feel like even like now he still wouldn't be, because I feel like he was elite and he had one amazing season, but I don't think he was ever, truly number one.
He was definitely number one but in my opinion, he was number one between 2010 and 2012 when he had 51, 45, and 60.
Yeah,
and then he had 30 goal. He had 29 in the 48 point season. So he's on pace for another 40 goal season.
My only argument there is that like Ovechkin managed to refine and like continue to outpace him thereafter. So like to be like the number one premier goal scorer for his entire era. I don't know. It's hard. It's just hard because he's playing with Ovechkin, you know?
The year he broke his leg, he had 25 goals in 37 games, which is freaking ridiculous. I think, I don't know if that has ever hampered his development, because since then he had 40, 36, and then he had another injury season. He had 27 goals, then 45, then 29 again last year, was hurt again. And this year he's got 16 and 30, which is about on pace for another 40-goal season. I don't know. I think had he not lost all that time, I think you might have seen him continue to hit 50 and 60 every single season. I don't know if that injury has necessarily hampered him, but the other issue is, and this is also another is he the most underrated player in the NHL? Because we never hear about him.
I feel like he's the most underappreciated.
He's got 863 points in 833 games, 438 goals. His last 5 seasons, we'll do last 4 because 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, because he was hurt. Right, 86 points in 78, 98 points in 82, 66 and 57, 31 and 30 this year, and we never hear about this guy. I mean, it's by the exactly. It's the virtue of who he's playing with. It's Kucherov, it's Braden Point, it's Victor Hedman, but I think he might be the most underrated player in the NHL. Like, nobody talks about this guy, and he's out here putting up almost 100 points.
Like I said, I don't know if he's the most I think he's the most underappreciated is the best way I'll put it. Like, I feel like people don't like appreciate how good Steven Stamkos actually is.
Yeah.
We kind of just take for granted how good he is because of the guys he's playing with, you know?
I think he's the last one to hit 60, right? I don't think anybody's done it since.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely kind of upsetting when you really think about it, because I remember when we were kids, it was all about Stamkos. You know, it was always you were practicing the one knee Stamkos one time, right? Ovechkin was there, right? We knew about Ovechkin, but it was always the Stamkos. You always wanted that Stammer one knee. And now I feel like nobody talks about this guy. Again, it's because of who he's playing with, but it's like, can we just get some love for Steven Stamkos? The guy almost put up 100 points 2 seasons ago.
I think the real thing is he, like you said, those injuries really just made him become like an ancillary piece to that team media-wise, you know, because he was always out of the lineup, so there really wasn't a lot to talk about.
That being said, that goal last year in the playoffs is going to be an image shown to hockey fans forever.
He's going to get a statue.
Yeah. I mean, you come back, you play 10 what was it, 4 minutes in the Stanley Cup Finals, and you still managed to strip John Klingberg and then nip one shorts or far side on Anton Hudobin.
Didn't he play like 2 shifts that whole game?
Yeah, because his leg injury was bothering him. But like in that 2 shifts, he managed to strip one of the Stars' best
That's what I'm
defensemen
saying.
and then
He
like
pretty much
rip
went out
one.
there, scored a goal, and then said, "I'm done."
And that picture will go down in the history books. You know, that's the Tampa Bay Lightning's version of the Bobby Orr goal, I think. You know, like the thing that you will show future Lightning fan, be like, yeah, this is Steven Stamkos scoring a goal in the Stanley Cup Finals because he was just that guy. You know, he's just that good.
Yeah. I agree.
We'll do one more. We'll wrap up on this one, which is the Toronto Maple Leafs ultimately would have ended up a more balanced and all-around better hockey team had they not tried and fix what wasn't broken on that 2013 team, specifically grossly misusing their assets in the rebuild and trading for Jonathan Bernier unnecessarily after a breakout year from James Reimer. What do you guys think?
I mean, they did some real interesting things after that, didn't they? Go out and sign like Jeremy Clarkson and like
David Clarkson?
David Clarkson. Yeah, Jeremy Clarkson's the guy from Top Gear. David Clarkson and like Nathan Horton, where they just like handing out contracts to anybody they could at that point.
They were trying to find Wendell Clark 2.0.
God, that was so bad. I mean, it doesn't get any better. I still think like that same ethos could be applied to this team now. It would be a better and more balanced team if they didn't break something and try to fix something that wasn't broken by signing John Tavares for $11 million a year. You know?
Is Freddie Anderson the new James Reimer?
Yeah, he's probably getting the short end of the stick the same way that Reimer did. I mean, Optimus Rhyme was solid for them on what were some of the worst teams in the league at that point.
Can anybody make heads or tails of that trade still?
Though, I still don't know why they wanted Bernier so bad.
The year that they traded for Bernier, Reimer played 33 games. He had 19 wins, 8 losses, 5 overtime losses, with a 2.46 and a 9.24 save percentage. His goals against average in the playoffs was 2.88. Maybe that's a little high, but his save percentage was 9.22. The guy was stopping the puck. like, Joe, can you make any sense of that trade for Jonathan Bernier? Does it make any sense to you now in hindsight, even?
Like, even when they had James Reimer, why would they go for it? I mean, I feel like they destroyed James Reimer's career.
You're barking right up the right tree. That's a lot.
You know, I think that James Reimer has found a new way to settle in as a backup / 1B with the Carolina Hurricanes, and I'm really glad he has because I think he's a solid goaltender. In 2013, actually, he set the this article might be outdated, but he said he had the best save percentage in Toronto Maple Leafs history at a 9.18 that year. So, I mean, he was making history, and then they just decided to not play him. And then, meanwhile, I think Jonathan Bernier had played, like, 2013, 2014. Up to that point, he had played 14 games that year. 16, so 30. 55. He'd played 58 games in the NHL on the LA Kings before they bought him in.
Yeah, no, that's... They definitely bought into, like, the illusion. I mean, he was well insulated by those LA teams. I mean, so it didn't make sense then. It doesn't make sense now. And I've heard rumors that Toronto should be looking at Jonathan Bernier again, and it's like, no, you already saw how this went the first time.
Do you think that ultimately all of those moves led to this totally top-heavy team that we saw today? Or do you think that that was kind of an inevitability after the Brian Burke era?
I think the top heaviness of the team just became an inevitability when I don't know if it's everything like this led directly to it, but and like the nuclear arms race that started in like terms of forwards, they definitely bought in hard and just started bringing in like every forward they could. So I think like indirectly, this definitely has played a big part in like turning the Maple Leafs into one of the most like like the biggest glass cannon in the league.
Yeah, I think that ultimately their decision to buy into the illusion of Jonathan Bernier and the illusion of what he represented, and then furthermore all the other moves they made has ultimately led them to be where they're at today. And I think had they decided to stick with the team, stick with the plan, and stick with James Reimer specifically, they would be in a better place today. I don't think that's all that unfair to say. So
I don't think so.
yeah, so I guess we'll end it there unless you guys have any other hot takes that you want to just throw at us last minute here, or
I don't have anything off the top of my head.
No, not that I can think of.
so I want to thank everybody who gave us these hot takes for this episode. I had a couple of Sabres fans give me their hot take, which is that the Sabres suck, which we know. Not really a hot take on that one, but
Ice cold.
freezing cold. This isn't Let's Agree, okay? This
Antarctic levels of coldness on this take.
they're absolutely a terrible hockey team, although they're only down 2-1 right now to the Pittsburgh Penguins, so we'll see what happens. But
Yeah, give them 5 minutes, they'll fall apart.
that being said, I want to thank everybody for watching. Don't really have a specific plan for next week's episode. Just gonna kind of be whatever is gonna be going on. I do plan on putting out a mini pod regarding the draft changes and the Tim Peel incident at some point very soon. Maybe whenever this goes up, maybe the day after or 2 days after, just to address those situations and what's going on there. But other than that, not really sure what we're going to do next week. Just depends on what happens in the National Hockey League. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys again next time.